And there we go. We are officially live on YouTube as well. So good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to my co-panelists for the day, Michelle and Margie. How are you guys?
I'm great. How are you, Joseph?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you both for agreeing and volunteering your time today. You're both extremely knowledgeable, and I'm happy for you both making your first appearance on the After Hours segment.
Yeah, happy to be here. Absolutely.
Amazing. So we're just going to get into some intros and then we're going to dive right in. So everyone, welcome to Family Law Now After Hours. Today's topic is dating again, how to tell your ex and kids. We are going to cover key strategies for building a new relationship while also maintaining a respectful and functional co-parenting relationship. Dating again can be an exciting new step for most, but introducing this to your ex and kids can also be nerve-wracking. And as always, we're here to help. So for those of us joining via Zoom today, please use the Q&A feature to submit any general questions or comments you may have about this topic. For specific questions, though, and about the details of your family law matter, please do contact our team directly or a lawyer in your area. If you are joining us today via YouTube, unfortunately, you won't have access to the Q&A features. That's just another reason why you should register via Zoom so you can have that extra tool at your fingertips. But unfortunately, again, if you are on YouTube, you won't be able to participate in the Q&A feature. This purpose, or I should say the purpose of the series rather, is to discuss general information on separation, divorce, and other family law matters, and any information provided here today should not be construed as legal advice. And as always, stay tuned until the end, as we will be sharing how you can schedule a free initial consultation with one of our lawyers here at Russell Alexander Family Lawyers. Now, time to introduce my co-panelists for the day. First off, we have Margie. Margie has over 17 years of experience in family law and has been a lawyer since 2002. She is a collaborative family law practitioner as well as an accredited mediator who is passionate about facilitating fair and reasonable settlements for her clients. Margie approaches law in a holistic manner and believes that, as a family lawyer, she has a unique opportunity to provide emotionally intelligent advice to clients that will assist them in moving forward with their lives in a better position with the best interest of her clients and their children in mind. We also have Michelle. Michelle is a senior managing lawyer here at the firm, and she has been practicing family law for over 14 years, specializing in divorce, custody and access, property division, child and spousal support, and family responsibility office enforcement matters. Her focus is on creating comprehensive, creative resolutions to family law matters. Michelle excels at helping clients deal with complex financial issues that arise as a result of separation. As for myself, I'm a compassionate family lawyer who's driven by a deep desire to support families through challenging times. With a background in commerce, I do bring strong negotiation, analytical, and critical thinking skills to my practice. And during my articling period, I gained confidence in handling a wide range of family law matters. I emphasize active listening, clear communication, and empathy, fostering a comfortable environment for clients. I am certified as well as Margie as a collaborative lawyer with the Ontario Association of Collaborative Professionals, and thus I offer clients an alternative dispute resolution approach to avoid court. Outside of work, I am a dedicated Toronto Maple Leafs fan, and I enjoy playing hockey and watching comedy movies. I always love throwing that little tidbit in there. So, with that, our introductions are now concluded. So let's get into the crux of why we're all here today, and that's dating again. How to tell your ex and how to bring it up to the kids. So first off, Michelle, I'll start with you. Before even broaching this subject to your children or even broaching the subject to your ex-partner, how do you, I guess, as maybe if you're trying to advise your clients about how to bring this up, or even maybe from what you've seen previously through other clients, how do you make sure the client themselves are emotionally ready before engaging in these conversations?
Thanks so much, Joseph. It's such a loaded question because the only person who can answer that is the client themselves. And, I'm a big proponent in being organized and ready and, before jumping into something, kind of looking at all the different aspects. So I really think Number one, you want to take time and space for yourself after the end of one relationship before going into another relationship. Usually, you're still dealing with a lot of issues, whether it's parenting, financial, support issues. So, it's a lot that's going on, and making sure that you're ready for that. I'm also a big proponent of therapy. And so if you feel that that would benefit you, and therapy comes in different ways. So it could be a traditional therapist, or what I really like to do is walks in nature or working out. Those are the things that I find really help me. And you just have to find what works best for you. Um, I also think it would be important to kind of reflect on your past relationship and learn some lessons from that, right? What worked, what didn't work, what you're going to look for in relationships going forward. So that's just generally the advice I give clients. And then as they come to me with questions or concerns, I'll give them a little bit more structured advice that's tailored to their specific needs. But what about you, Margie? Any thoughts on this?
Actually, as I was telling you earlier, Michelle, I actually have been through this. I have personal experience, having gone through a separation myself and children. I completely agree with you. At that time, you're grieving the death of a relationship, right? So you need that time to grieve, and you need time to take care of yourself and to take care of your children. So take that time, right? And when you're ready, emotionally ready, you'll know, but give yourself that time to grieve the death of a relationship, and to make sure that you're okay and your kids are okay.
No, 100%. And I mean, it's not necessarily even just you that you have to worry about. And I mean, one should always prioritize their own mental health and um, their their emotional intelligence and everything else moving forward. But it's also considering how that news will affect others, and especially those that are really close to you. And what people sometimes seem to forget is that, more often than not, if there's children involved in these relationships, they're going to have a big influence, or at least they should be at the forefront of how decisions by you are made. And while it's also important that, or at least what I tell clients, it's really important that they acknowledge that while they are entitled to move on, which is as their right, and they're going through these various stresses and various emotions throughout this process, their decisions affect their children as well as the co-parent involved. And what I like to tell clients is that they should really be thinking about the timing, the tone, as well as the setting when disclosing their new relationship. And the same way the news that their original or first or second, whatever it may be, whenever they found out the news and the experiences and the emotional responses they went through, when their relationship and they're going through their separation, um, they should expect themselves a range of emotional responses from now their ex. Surprise, sadness, anxiety, indifference. These are all things that can stem from these, the news that you're bringing to these people. So while and just jumping now into the family law context, because as family lawyers, we always like to provide the legal framework about these discussions and how it may apply to you or may not apply to you. What I do tell clients, because this is a question that often does come up, is that there's no legal obligation per se to inform your ex of your dating life. But what I like to tell clients is that it's really wise, or that they should consider doing so, and to communicate significant changes that may affect the children with their co-parent. Because at the end of the day, it is a co-parent, and you still have an obligation to make sure that the best interests of the children are prioritized and at the forefront of any decisions that are made. And what I also like to tell clients is that courts expect parents to promote positive relationships with the other parent and avoid unnecessary conflict. And a blindsiding approach could definitely be something that undermines this. And if you're looking at it from maybe a practical standpoint, if there's maybe already been an agreement or a domestic contract in place, or there is a final order, if the parties do share decision-making responsibility, for example, or maybe they have parallel parenting, um, I really advise clients that they be cautious about decisions that affect the children's emotional well-being or their daily life, because at the end of the day, if you're going to be making decisions with this new person, if you do have a joint decision-making regime or parallel parenting, you should not be making decisions unilaterally. And while, these discussions with this new partner may be an important part of the process, you have to make sure that we're not excluding the co-parent who's involved as well. And then what I'd like to say is in terms of best practices, um, it's really key that they are approaching their ex with courtesy, and maybe not necessarily for approval because they don't really need that approval, but out of respect and the co-parenting goodwill. And the conversation should be factual and focused on how it may affect the children. And if there is a history of high conflict, consider using a parenting act. Our family wizard, talking parents, there's so many ways in which this can be communicated. Anyone want to piggyback off that or have anything maybe from past experiences that they've maybe dealt with?
Well, in terms of what you said, you should inform your ex because, just remember that being respectful to your children includes being respectful to their parent, the other parent, right? And you don't want to throw this new relationship in the face of your ex. Um, and you don't want your ex to find out about the fact that you're now dating or in a serious relationship. You don't want them to find out through the children or through friends, right? So it's best that the news comes from you. And I would suggest that the news comes from you to your ex first before you even start telling your children. Because that's going to impact the whole family dynamic. And when I say family dynamic, that includes your ex, right? That's the only thing I could say about that. But yeah.
No, 100%. And I mean, you know, we've already sort of tossed around the idea of, keeping your ex informed, but not necessarily seeking their approval with respect to the decisions that you're making. And I know you also mentioned, respect is a really key factor, but how do you at least help clients navigate the differences between, respecting their role as a co-parent, but they're also not the gatekeeper of your decisions or even the gatekeeper of how you should be living your life?
Yeah, I think it's always the bottom line is when you're a co-parent, it's the children that come first, right? And you always have to ask, if I do X, or I should say, if I do A, B, or C, how is that going to impact my children, right? And so if you're being disrespectful, if you're throwing, this new relationship in your ex's face, or if you're telling them like, so and so was better than you, my new girlfriend or my new boyfriend is better than you, how is that gonna how is that in the best interest of your children? It's not, right? Because that's going to sour the relationship you have with the other parent. So anything that you do, I always tell my clients this, anything that you do, they always ask, is it okay for me to do this? The answer to that is that if I do this, is it going to impact my children negatively or positively? And if the answer is negatively, then don't do it. If it's positively, then go ahead. Absolutely. Right? I hope that answered your question, but that's
No,
what I
it
have to say.
did.
Yeah.
100%. And I mean, we've already sort of had these discussions about, keeping your ex informed, but there's going to be a time when the children themselves, they're going to have to be aware of what's happening. And, when you have a new woman or man coming over to the home, they're going to say, "Oh, is this, new mom? Is this new dad?" Like there's going to be a lot of questions. So I mean, Michelle, I'm sure you get these, questions a lot. Um, in terms of informing the children, some people say, "Oh, you shouldn't introduce new partners for 3 months or 6 months," and these might be terms that are even included in separation agreements or final orders. So, how do you navigate those conversations in terms of, timing, what you're including in these conversations? How do you broach the subject, or at least help clients broach the subject with their children?
That's such a great question, Joseph. And it's really age and stage dependent too, right? There's also, you have to look at the permanence of the relationship. I mean, if you're dating again and you've seen this person for 2 or 3 times, if a client comes to me and says, "Hey, I want to introduce these people to my kids, or I want to bring my new beau over to my kid's baseball game," I would say to them, and very similar to what Margie says, I just phrase it in an interesting way where I say, "Hey, at the end of the school year, your kid is, I don't know, in kindergarten. So they've got a kindergarten celebration, right? Do you want to attend that kindergarten celebration and be so toxic and to be so, to have such a bad relationship with both your co-parent and your child that it's a deterrent from the celebration? Or do you want that to be a happy occasion where everyone can celebrate together? And that may be kindergarten or grade 6 grad or grade 8 grad or whatever it is, right? And I think that really helps to put it into perspective for people. If I do this, if I tell the kids now, how is that going to impact them and the family and the greater family unit, including my ex? So I think there's a lot that you have to sit down and think about. And as I said, I love to be prepared. So part of that, thought process is how long has this person been in my life and how long do I expect this person to be in my life? And if it's a shorter term relationship, I would say, hey, maybe let's not do it yet. But if it is going to be a longer term relationship and you are introducing the kids, I would say do it slowly. It's not a, hey, this is your new daddy. That's absolutely not the way you should be doing this. It's more of a, hey, this person is important in my life. And age and stage, right? So for a toddler or someone who's really young, you may just introduce them as a friend to start with. And then as time goes on, be a little bit more detailed. But for bigger kids, they're smart. They know you can't pull one over on them. So, for teenagers, you may have to have those more awkward conversations. I've been seeing this person. It's not that I've been keeping it from you. It's that I wanted to make sure that there was some permanence here before I introduced you guys. I want to make sure that my ex-partner is okay with this. Again, you guys are the number one.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
So sorry. Go ahead. Finish your thought. Sorry.
No, no, that's okay. And as Margie said, if you have a good relationship with the opposing party, sometimes bringing them into that conversation would be a great idea. Or alternatively, if you have a bad relationship with the opposing party, giving them that heads up that, hey, this is happening. I'm going to tell, it's not permission, but I'm going to tell the kids today. So when you see them tomorrow, they may have questions, right? And if you want to talk to me about it, you can.
No, well, all really great points. And I know I sort of brought it up when I was introducing the question, but I'm going to ask maybe both you and Margie for your takes on this. I mean, I guess, how often do you see those terms either in an agreement or final order with respects to timing about when to introduce a new partner at what stage? And I guess B, do you agree with including those provisions? And I mean, I guess C, is it more tailored to more high conflict parents where you actually need to sort of spell it out for them when and where they should be having these discussions and at what stages? Or do you maybe not liking including that because it creates conflict and tension? I mean, what are your thoughts on those types of provisions in agreements or orders?
Well, if I may, usually see it in, I've seen it in files where the new relationship was a result of infidelity. Um, and because the relationship has been ongoing before the separation, the other parent, the the wronged parent, if I may say that, um, often has, and reasonably so, understandably so, hurt feelings, and they want to make sure that this new person is, there's some time before the new person is introduced to the children. The social science studies say at the bare minimum it should be 6 to 9 months, and it's mainly, like Michelle had mentioned, it's really about the strength of the new relationship. If it's really a relationship that you feel is a serious one, the quality of the relationship is important as well. So 6 to 9 months is what I see. And to answer your question, I think that if it helps avoid conflict in the future, why not? Right? Like if it avoids conflict in the future, then that's the purpose of a separation agreement, and it really depends on the parties. But again, it's mostly in those situations where the new relationship was a result of infidelity. What about you, Michelle? What's your experience with that?
Yeah, so I've seen it both ways. I've seen it where there's a very high conflict and one person is particularly concerned, whether there's been infidelity or a parade of people coming into the children's lives. The other way I've seen it is for parents who really are child focused and want to ensure that they're having a good co-parenting relationship. And the reality is, this is a guide, right? If someone tells, the kids at 5 months instead of 6 months, you'll never know. You never know when they started that dating. So it is a bit of a mutual respect and cooperation to have those terms in there and to say, hey, this is how we're going to do it. And you'll give me a heads up first, allow me a day or two so that if I have any questions, I can, know. And then I'll be able to respond when the kids inevitably ask me questions rather than feeling the emotional burden of learning it from my kids. Right? Regardless of how long a separation has been, I think there is an emotional aspect to somebody moving on, even if you have already moved on finding on that your partner has also moved on, there is an emotional burden on you and the kids. So, yeah, I've seen it both ways.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, there was a separation agreement I did recently where, there was no infidelity, but it was more so just not wanting to bring new individuals into the child. Like, albeit the child was young, she's in preschool, so it's just not wanting to bring new individuals into the child's life when the parents themselves are still trying to work out issues. So there's definitely a magnitude of reasons why or why not these certain provisions would be included, but I definitely appreciate the roundtable discussion on that one. Now moving forward, sort of piggybacking off of, Michelle's prior discussion about the timing of these conversations, and, after speaking to several family professionals, um, when clients do raise the concerns of, um, sure. So maybe I understand that the timing now is appropriate, but what do I actually say to the children? What should form the basis, or what context should I be delivering to the children? And what I like to reiterate to clients is that it's really important to reassure your children about their place in your life, and making it clear that they remain your priority. And I mean, the context of these conversations, again, as Michelle stated, and Margie both stated, it's going to be age dependent. So depending on what stage the child is like, or what stage of life the child is in, and how much they can actually understand and contextualize, that's also really important too. But it's really important that regardless of their age, you're taking into consideration both the emotional and developmental factors. And if the children are younger, or even if they are, a preteen and they have all those mixed emotions because they are a preteen, children may very well feel replaced. May feel insecure, or they may even have questions about, the new partner themselves, and or how a new partner in general will change their role in your life. And reinforcing, I find that your love and your commitment to them is unconditional, and unchanging. I really like the unconditional aspect, because it shouldn't matter who is involved in the children's life as long as your role is not changing and they understand that. I think that's extremely, extremely important. And again, always going back to the family law context aspect. If there is a concern that your ex-spouse, or your ex-partner might raise, legal issues. For example, they may want to change parenting time. They may allege instability, which oftentimes we do see. Um, what I like to tell clients that it's really important to reinforce the child's emotional security, as well as the continuity and the status quo in their routine, because A, that helps demonstrate responsible parenting, which is always something that the courts look at, and B, the best interest of the child. And when they look at the standard and they're evaluating the standard, especially when parenting issues are raised, emotional stability and consistency are really key components, and they formulate a large chunk of this test. So making sure that you're using child-focused language, that you're watching for behavioral changes in your child post-disclosure. So seeing if the children are experiencing withdrawal or aggression, regression, um, you should be identifying that and seeking professional support if needed. Again, it's not a weakness to engage in professionals in terms of the mental health aspect or um, dealing with professionals who are geared towards these types of situations. Again, as family lawyers, we all wear multiple hats, but you wouldn't call your family lawyer if you're having a leaky faucet, right? So it's really important that you're engaging in the right professionals at the right times. Um, Again, what I'd love to tell clients again is it's really important to be patient, and you shouldn't be rushing the children to accept your new relationship. It's really important that the children are guiding this process and that they're guiding this relationship, especially if they are older, and that they're going to have a stronger views and preferences over what's transpiring and their new relationship with this new person. So allow their comfort to guide the pace. Margie, Michelle, any maybe thoughts on that?
Well, I completely agree with what you've said. Um, in terms of the just going back to, when you're introducing this new person, what I did was I introduced them as a friend. And you don't want any public displays of affection. You want to treat this person as if they're, not a romantic interest, because you're trying to ease your children into the idea of this new person, right? Because when you're introducing a new person to your children, you're putting an end to their dream that their parents will reconcile, right? So when you're talking about, the timing and like how to tell the children, um, that's what struck me. Like I that's the thought that went into my head, is, you just make sure that, like Michelle said, ease them into it. But how do you do that? No public displays of affection. Like you said, don't force the relationship on your children. Let your children be the guide. Let them know that this person's not replacing your mom or your dad, right? This person is going to be another person who's going to love you, right? So yeah, it's a complicated time, and yeah, the older they are, like you said, the more you have to tread lightly on that specific, especially, right?
I mean, I don't have children myself, so it's always great hearing the perspectives of people who do have children. And I mean, whether or not you've like, whether or not you're in Margie's case where you've actually gone through this process, or or you haven't, I think every perspective itself is really important. And I mean, whether or not you have gone through this process or you're still trying to navigate this process on your own or with the help of resources, there's no perfect playbook, right? The same thing with parenting. They don't give you a playbook for parenting. They don't tell you what to do, what not to do. It's sort of you're navigating the waters yourself. So I mean, I think you've raised an amazing, you both raised amazing points on these issues. Um, but now I know we sort of talked about the idea of delaying the introduction until the relationship is serious. I know Michelle brought that up. They typically say, or sorry, Margie typically said that the professionals suggest about a 6 to 9 month period time to see whether or not the relationship is serious enough to even broach the subject. I mean, Margie, is there anything you want to maybe add about sort of limiting the revolving door relationships around your children and maybe the negative impact that can have on the children?
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to introduce your kids unless you're certain that this is going to be a serious long-term relationship, right? So again, there goes about the quality of the relationship. Because you could be dating someone for 6 to 9 months, and it's not like, unless you could see yourself being with this person for on a long-term basis, and it's serious, then don't introduce your children, right? And if that means waiting a year, then so be it. And and you alluded to this, Joseph, you want to avoid a situation where your children are exposed to so many different people. And not only that, they become attached, right? And then all of a sudden you break up with this person. Emotionally, for children who have become attached to that person, and then you're now dating a third person and introducing that new person into their lives. It's sort of it could lead to a sort of a situation where your children lack trust in and there's no stability, right? And as you mentioned, Joseph, we want stability for the children, and we want consistency, and that includes the consistency of the people in their lives, right?
No, 100%, 100%. And I mean, in terms of again, like right now we're gonna go back to the sharing and the context of these conversations. I mean, Michelle, I already, spoke about the fact that there's no legal basis that you need to share these details with your co-parent, but you're doing it, on the basis of goodwill, keeping them informed, trying to keep that relationship intact and avoiding, adding additional tension where necessary. Um, how do you tell clients, I guess, to keep, an understanding or an eye when looking at the balance between being honest, but at the same time, maybe not necessarily oversharing to either their ex or even the children itself? Like, how do you define what's enough information to provide them to at least you're showing goodwill, but at the same time, you're not giving them the full details or the roadmap of your life?
Yeah. And again, age and stage, right? You're going to hear that from us so many times. So I've got four kids. And what I would tell my 14-year-old is very different from what I would tell my 4-year-old, right? And how you introduce that, I think as a parent, you have a good idea about what their emotional capacity is, their developmental health. Every 4-year-old is not the same. Every 14-year-old is not the same. So I think, as Margie said, kind of slowly introducing that, giving children the time to process, to ask questions, to be curious, letting them know that they can ask questions and that this is an open conversation, not a it's my way or the highway kind of thing is also important. Um, and, if you really are truly struggling with that, we have resources. You can talk to a therapist, we can talk to, someone who deals with children or a counselor to help discuss that and how to approach that. Let's say I have a child who's having developmental issues or really having a really emotional adverse reaction the separation. I may want to delay that. And I may want to talk to the child's counselor about these issues and see, what they think and get their insights into this. I'd also want to be holistic in my view. I'd want to think about how the child is doing socially, in their education, in their health, in their mental health. There's so many things that come with parenting. And as I have truly learned, what works with child one isn't necessarily going to work with child two, even though they're brought up in the same household. They're just very different little personalities. So making it about your child, even the how to, when to do it, where to do it might be influenced by things that your child likes. Maybe, as Margie said, if you have a person who you're going to introduce as a friend and your kid loves mini golf, maybe you all go mini golfing together as a, way to break the ice and to see. It's also really nice to get to test out those relationships before you actually tell the kids. So seeing how they interact with your child and, are they a good influence? Are they good with kids? Like, are they natural or, what are their thoughts on all of this? You have some significant others who say, look, your kid is lovely, but they're your kid, and I'm just going to be more hands off. And there are other people who want to jump in and be a parent, and that may be something that that kid doesn't want because they're still struggling with the separation. So, very slowly, age and stage dependent, and if need be, bring in the professionals is always my advice.
Yeah, definitely really, really good points. Um, And, going back to, again, dealing with the idea of emotional responses, um, and different people, even if they're the same age, even if they're grown up in the same household, their reactions can be on a scale from 0 to 100, as you mentioned. And I mean, it's really important that you're respecting everyone's emotional responses who are involved, really allowing time and space for both your ex and your kids to process this news. um, from an empathy and boundary standpoint. um, your ex's emotional reaction may not necessarily be your problem, but it definitely may affect your co-parenting relationship, and especially if there's unresolved grief or bitterness, depending on how the separation unfolded. And with respect to the children themselves, they're going to show confusion, they're going to show sadness, they may even show anger, and all of these feelings are normal and justified. So what I like to tell clients in preparing them for this is that you should be making room for expression without judgment. That's really, really important because everyone's going to have their own feelings regarding the news, and it's really, really important that you understand that the range of these emotional responses can vary, drastically. Um, and it may be the case where the at least your ex's emotional reaction, and it could lead to their response could, for whatever reason, escalate to court involvement, as we've sometimes seen. For example, there can be motions to restrict parenting time. Sometimes people feel the need to bring some sort of or seek relief from the court to prevent exposure to your new partner. More often than not, it's justified for certain reasons. For example, if maybe there's a drug or alcohol issue, maybe there's outstanding criminal charges or prior convictions that make you uneasy, which again is definitely reasonable in the circumstances. But um, sometimes there may be no reasonable basis for bringing these claims. However, the claims are still brought. And what I like to tell clients going through this process is that their ability to show measured, respectful handling of the transition will be extremely important. And being able to avoid antagonistic behaviors um, is also really key. And I think when judges are looking to make a decision on these things, showing that again, there's evidence to show that you've taken a reasonable, respectful approach to introducing this new partner, and again, avoiding the antagonistic behavior and letting the children test the waters. You're not throwing them, head first, but rather they're taking the steps. They're going, step by step. They're dipping their toes in, and so on and so forth. Those are all key factors that are taken into consideration. And, ultimately, what I love to tell, clients when they're trying to broach the subject or asking for advice on how to handle these situations, again, it goes back to the things that, us panelists have discussed prior today. Really important to give advance notice before your children meet your new partner. And there should be a follow-up afterward to check in how they're feeling. It's really important that you are being conscious of not dismissing or minimizing your ex's feelings or even your children's feelings. It's really important to acknowledge them, but at the same time, you should also still be reaffirming your own right to happiness and stability. Like, we're not saying your feelings don't matter, but at the same time, you still really do have to be conscious of your ex's and your children's feelings moving forward. And again, as always, you want to avoid conflict, or at least if you do anticipate conflict, really important to avoid defensiveness, avoiding justification. Really important to use neutral language when you're having these conversations. Again, if tensions are already high to begin with, really important to use those parenting apps. Those are really great tools. I think our Family Wizard just released an AI function where it'll actually rewrite what you write to the parent, and it'll make it in a neutral tone manner. And it's crazy how it can just take messages and just reconfigure them to make them appropriate in the circumstances. Um, Margie, Michelle, anything to, so I know some of the topics are a little bit repetitive, but I mean, I think it's good to hash out these issues and to really, dive deep into these conversations. Anything to add?
Yeah, in terms of real life examples, because I love to give my client real life examples. is I had one of these situations recently where unfortunately there was a little bit of a revolving door. Dad and mom separated, mom remained in the home, dad had a new apartment. The new apartment only had one bedroom. And what dad was doing is having different women over. So every couple of weeks it would be a new person. And when the children were sleeping over, one child would sleep on the couch, one child was younger and would sleep in the bed with dad. And sometimes these women actually slept in the bed with dad. And, we had to bring emotion to basically say, hey, look, dad is not thinking about the children's best interest. And dad actually lost some of his parenting time as a result and some stern warnings from a judge. So, these things have very long-term impacts, and parenting time affects child support, spousal support, it could even affect division of property and, where the children stay. So there's so many implications that while it is crucial that you do it for the kids' emotional and mental well-being, it may actually impact your case. So you may want to run these things by your lawyer first. I also had another situation where it was only one person and it was a long-term partner, but the child did feel replaced. And as that child got older, they have a voice. And as that child got older, over a couple of years, they kept voicing to the parent who had repartnered that, they weren't comfortable staying with them as often. They weren't as comfortable with that new parent parenting them. And eventually came to a position where the child made the decision when they were of age to go live with the other party. So, really, these things have such long-term impacts on you, on your kids, on your relationship, on, the rest of your life, that it's something not to be taken lightly at all.
Well,
Go ahead,
and
Margie.
I think that's why it's important to, emphasize counseling, um, not just for, yourself, but for the children. It helps them sort of have a safe place where they can express their feelings about this new relationship and get the tools they need to sort of how to handle it. Because the sooner you have that sort of counseling in place, the better, right? It'll avoid hopefully that sort of situation that you referenced, Michelle. But I think we've all seen that, where the child, when they reach the age of 14, 15, 16, now decide they want to live with the other parent, right? So it's important. And to your point, Joseph, I always tell my clients to always take the high road, right? And you're correct. Like when you get in front of a judge, the judge will look at how you reacted, what steps you took, and whether those steps were reasonable and, again, in the best interest of your children. And if they are, that helps your case. But if you're sending messages to your ex that, hey, my new girlfriend's a model and much better than you, and that emotional aspect is not something that we can control as lawyers, right? But that will have an impact on your file, right? And I always tell people, anyone can sue you for anything. So
Mhm.
don't give your ex a reason, reasonable or not, but emotionally driven to sort of bring you to court. So take the high road. So I always tell my clients.
And since you brought up the idea of models, um, how do you at least help clients avoid making those comparisons between, their new partners and exes and the implications on parenting? And maybe it could be the case where, these conversations arise where I love how my new partner parents, and that sort of feeds into maybe tensions about different parenting styles and all those types of conversations.
Well, that's the thing, right? The past is the past. There's a reason why you're no longer with that person and why you're with this new person. So focus on that, right? Focus on that and focus on your children and this new unit that you're creating. But yeah, I mean, you don't want to, like I said, I mean, I don't want to repeat it, but you don't want to antagonize your ex, um, and and you also don't want to compare your ex in front of your children, right? That their parent, their other parent, children are going to see that other parent as an extension of themselves. So if you're going to insult their other parent, either by comparing them to your new partner, the children are going to internalize that and feel that you're comparing them, your children, to this new parent, this new partner, right? So anything that you say or do in front of your children that puts the other parent in a bad light negatively impacts your children. So don't do it, right? Don't
Mm.
compare your ex to your new partner. Oh, my new partner is so much better than your mom or your dad. Your dad is a deadbeat. Your new partner, like, don't say those sort of things because the children are gonna internalize it. That is a part of them. You're a part of them. The other parent is a part of them. So don't speak negatively at all, ever, in under any circumstances about the other parent,
Even if it's justified.
even if it's justified. Write yourself an email. I tell my clients this: write yourself an email. If you're angry at your ex, write the email to your ex, addressed to your ex, but to yourself, and then delete it. So no one else has to know about it. You've let it all out, right? Don't tell your lawyer how horrible your ex is unless it's relevant, to their parenting. Um, but yeah, that's don't say it in front of your children, period.
And that really takes us back full circle to the first topic, which is, therapy for yourself and, self-help ways so that you're not doing that. Because sometimes people do it and they don't even know that they're doing it and they don't realize the impact it's having on their child until it's too late, until, it's too late and the kids are no longer there. Someone asked the question, what is the age that children can make decisions? Well, that's a really interesting question because, they're an adult at 18, but if you have teenagers, you know that by about 14, they start becoming very vocal about what it is that they want and don't want. And my 14-year-old is as tall and weighs as much as me. So if I were to say to her, unreasonably, you're not doing this or you're not having parenting time with dad or whatever it is, at some point they're going to start rebelling and they're going to start asking the other parent if they can spend more time with them. So it's just going to have this really horrible cyclical effect if you try to impose your will on children after a certain age. I heard this interesting piece of parenting advice where, from about the time they're born to about the time they're 9 to 12, depending on the child, you're in an instructional model. You're teaching your children what is good. You're really molding and shaping them. But at some point, they start to have opinions and they start to become little people and start thinking for themselves. And then your role is more of a guide, right? You can't make them do what you want anymore. You have to kind of teach them the whys. It's not a authoritarian. It's say, hey, these are why we would say it's not a great idea to eat candy for lunch every day, right? Your tummy ends up hurting. You end up missing school. You miss that baseball game with your friends, So do that kind of same thought process depending on how old your child is. At some point, they're going to start acting up and they're going to start acting up in your care. And that will reflect badly on your parenting time and your parenting role.
100%. And I mean, again, I knew when you first broached the subject that we were going to have a bunch of questions, you know, geared towards what is the age. And I mean, I know Michelle tossed around the age of 14, but there really is no exact age. I mean, I have files where the Office of the Children's Lawyer is involved, and I have a 9-year-old. She's not my client, but she's one of the child's involved. And I mean, I would think she was 20, the way I saw she communicates to the parents and the mothers. And I mean, her views and preferences, ideally at age 9, they're not so heavily weighed by the judge when making parenting decisions. But given the maturity of this 9-year-old and the way she's able to conduct herself, it's mind-boggling to me. Like I would think she was a grown woman already done high school, the way she speaks. So I mean, it very much is fact dependent. A 9-year-old in one household is not going to be the same 9-year-old in another household. But when the child gets to a point where they're able to articulate a reasonable position as to their views and preferences, that's when a judge is going to take those into account. And I mean, they have a legislative duty to do so anyways, and regardless of their age, but the way in which they take these views and preferences into account. There again, there's no specific number, but there's a wide range of factors that are taken into consideration. Um, I'm mindful of the time. I know we have one more topic that I wanted to touch on for our viewers before we sign off for the day. And, that's the idea of reaching out to other professionals when needed. Michelle, do you maybe want to speak on that point?
Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, all of this is expensive, right? So we understand that, and so I have kind of a internal list that I give to my clients, but there's so many things, and I'm still learning, right? All of the great resources that are available. So in terms of therapy and mental health, you might be able to find free resources in your community. You might be able to find resources through your assistance program if you have an employee assistance program. Sometimes there are things through the school for children. Sometimes there are things through community organizations. So there is help available. You can go to your doctor. There's lots of help available. Sometimes it's just finding the right one and the thing that fits. So going to those people, doing research yourself, going online and finding out about all these different specialties and, what you might want for your particular case. It's not a one size fit all. Therapist A may be a wonderful therapist, but may not work for your situation. So for instance, we have play therapy, we have equine therapy where kids can go and hang out with horses and also get that, support they need. So speak to the people in your life, including your lawyer, and they may have some ideas because I've never met any of the kids I work with, but I feel like I know them. I know their little personalities. I hear about their report cards. I hear about the sassy little things that they say to their parents. You really get a good idea about the children, even from hearing it from their parents. You also get a good idea as a lawyer about the parents and some things they may not realize about themselves and some things they may not know. So I'm a bit of a tough love lawyer. I want to be the person telling it to you before the judge tells you it for the first time in a courtroom. So if I think you've maybe done something incorrectly, I also want to be an interventionist where if you do something incorrectly the first time, I want to teach you. I want to teach you how we could do this better next time so it doesn't become a pattern. And by the time we get to court, it's out of control and it's blown up into motions. Let's kind of work on things as we go. I have clients with mental health issues, addiction issues, clients who just are really good people but are struggling. And so I'm able usually to give them a little bit of advice as to what kind of therapist they need. What about you, Margie? You've been doing this for longer than me. How do you kind of choose what type of assistance your clients usually need?
Well, I always recommend that they get counseling. And more often than not, in more recent years, I sound so old. In more recent years, I find more and more of my clients already have counseling in place before they even come to me. And I think that's amazing. Um, because as lawyers, we're not counselors. We're not trained to help you with all the emotional aspects of your separation. We're not qualified to do that. And plus, our hourly rates are a lot higher than a counselor. So, working in tandem with a professional who can help you with the emotional aspects of your separation um, is a plus because it helps us do our jobs a lot more efficiently. And sometimes, we also have in a collaborative setting, we have the family professional that also helps in the background manage the emotional aspect of the separation. So, go out and there are a lot of amazing counselors out there But I always recommend that clients seek counseling to deal with the emotional aspects of their separation.
Perfect. Um, we've sort of touched on all of our topics today. Um, any final thoughts you guys want to share based on our discussion today?
Well, I just wanted to go back to the question about the age. And to your point, there is no set date, like, from the heavens, like, it's this age, it's in the, in the law. But generally, like to your point, Joseph, the younger the children are, there are exceptional children, but in general, the younger the children are, their views and preferences will be considered, but it's not the determining factor. But the older they get, the closer they get to, 16, 17, 18, that's where their views and preferences will have more weight. And also sometimes they'll talk with their feet, right? And if you're that parent with the new relationship and this kid doesn't want to stay with you and they're 16, 17, 18, there's not much you can do. There's no judge that I'm aware of that will say, I'm going to enforce this parenting plan, this parenting agreement. Now that your kid is 16, 17, 18, they sometimes will talk with their feet. That's all I wanted to add.
No,
And
100%. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Michelle.
well, that's okay. You know, we always throw around best interest of the children. It really is truly that. If I were, let's say I were the judge and I were to force a 15-year-old to spend time with a parent who they truly didn't want to and had valid reasons and were able to articulate those valid reasons for not wanting to spend time, I'm going to irreparably damage that relationship long term. And also, I may be giving harm to that child, right? There may be longer term effects on that child if I, as a judge, don't listen. So, we have lots of tools in our arsenal. There's something called the Voice of the Child report, where you have older children who can speak to therapists, who can speak to third parties to give their opinion. And then where you have younger children who are very articulate, like Joseph's, example of the 9-year-old, you may get a Section 30 assessment. And if that child is able to fully articulate why they want a certain schedule, they'll give examples and they'll give information, and that assessor can go and follow up on that information and follow up on those things and confirm it's true. And that assessor may be swayed as well. So, there's just so much to think about with age and stage, but really it comes down to we all want what's best for the kids, no matter what side I'm on. I really want what's best for those children. And I still have clients to this day who, when I finish with my files, I say to my clients, if you feel up to it, I would love to hear from you around Christmas. Send me an email, send me a card, let me know how the kids are doing. And I get those all the time. I get the updates and I share my life updates with them because I find that you're irreparably, connected to that family, no matter what. So
100%. Um, And I think that sums up our conversation today. I think we had a really great dialogue. Thank you so much for everyone on YouTube and here on Zoom for tuning into Family Law Now. Following the session, a brief survey will appear on your screen if you are joining us via Zoom, allowing you to share your comments and suggestions for future topics that you'd like us to explore. And as always, your feedback is greatly, greatly appreciated. Now that we are at the end of our segment today, you are able to book to take advantage of the opportunity I previously mentioned as it relates to a complimentary consultation with one of our lawyers here at Russell Alexander. Please contact our intake team at intake@russellalexander.com. It's two S's, two L's. And you will provide the code SPRING 2025. That's SPRING 2025 to schedule your appointment. You do have to send an email to our intake department by noon on Friday. However, you do not have to have your consultation by noon on Friday. So it's really important that you get your emails in by noon on Friday if you would like to take advantage of this offer. Registration is also now open for the next event, Understanding Legal Jargon Used by Your Divorce Lawyer. And all you have to do is just go to russellalexander.com/family law now. Thank you so much to our panelists for sharing your insights today. Margie and Michelle, both such knowledgeable individuals and I always learn from you guys whenever I talk with you. So thank you so much for being here today. And thank you, the viewers, again, both on Zoom and YouTube, for tuning in to Family Law Now After Hours. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.